Heroen had faced plasma fire from starships, orbital bombardments, and once even a boarding crew of mercenaries who tried to knife fight their way through his cockpit. None of that compared to the letter taped to his front door. Notice of non-compliance. It read in cheerful, pastel blue print. Below, in smaller letters, grass length exceeds 2.5 centimeters, violating Community Ordinance 7B. Immediate remediation required. Heroen stared at it the way a man stares at a snake coiled on his boot. The letter wasn't just paper. It was the opening move of the Homeowners Association, an organization that cloaked itself in smiles, bylaws, and a dangerous devotion to community harmony. Around here, nobody ignored a notice. People who didn't stay. Ridiculous, Heroen muttered. His grass was perfect. At least perfect enough. Maybe a little uneven near the fence. But what of it? The galaxy wasn't going to collapse because of a patch of rebellious greenery. A tiny whir filled the air. Heroen glanced up and saw a palm-sized drone drifting overhead, camera lens glinting. It dipped toward the lawn like a vulture sniffing a corpse. He waved at it, unamused. "Tell your masters the grass and I are negotiating." The drone beeped, dropped a holographic banner across his yard. Non-compliant, then zipped away. Heroen sighed. His neighbors across the street peeked from their window blinds. He could almost hear them whisper, "Oh no, he's been flagged." In this neighborhood, lawn violations were more scandalous than affairs. By the time Heroen retreated into his house, a second notice had already materialized in his inbox. Same cheerful pastel, triple the fines. He poured himself a coffee and ignored it. He'd fought wars, liberated colonies, and carried medals he'd never asked for. He wasn't about to tremble before a lawn committee. At least that's what he told himself. 2 days later, the HOA escalated. It began with the sprinklers refusing to turn on water supply, suspended pending compliance. Heroen fixed them manually, only for a second drone to swoop in and shut them off again. The third day, his mailbox locked itself and projected another pastel blue warning. Outgoing mail restricted. The fourth day, they came for his relic. It wasn't much to look at. Just a small, battered metal sphere, the size of a fist, resting on his mantle. A keepsake from the war, something the brass had told him to forget about. He hadn't, not because of sentimentality, but because the thing still pulsed faintly in the dark, like a heart refusing to die. When Heroen got home from his evening walk, the sphere was gone. In its place sat an HOA business card. For the safety of the community, prohibited artifacts have been removed. Please schedule a compliance consultation at your earliest convenience. Heroen's jaw clenched. That night, he found himself on his porch, watching the perfect rows of houses glow under identical soft lighting. Every roof the same angle, every fence the same color, every neighbor too frightened to wave. A figure slipped out of the shadows. "Nice lawn scandal you've got brewing," the woman said. She had messy hair, a satchel over her shoulder, and the kind of grin people wear when they enjoy trouble. Heroen frowned. "You're on the board?" She snorted. "God, no. I'm Marla. 2 houses down, the one with the rose bushes. The HOA hates me. I keep planting them asymmetrically." Heroen wasn't sure what to make of her. "You spying then?" "Spying?" Marla pulled a small device from her satchel. It hummed, and a tiny drone overhead sparked and fell out of the sky. More like poking the bear. Heroen raised an eyebrow. "That'll get you exiled." "Yeah, well," she said with a shrug. "Better than letting them trim me into a hedge." She leaned in, eyes bright. "You do realize they're after you now, right? Not the lawn. You." Heroen sipped his coffee. "Because I didn't mow?" "Because you didn't bend," Marla corrected. "Nobody resists them. People comply, pay the fines, keep their heads down. You stood there and waved at their drone like you owned the sky. That's not allowed here." Heroen looked out at the neighborhood again. Perfect symmetry, enforced peace. He thought of the relic stolen from his home. "I've fought worse enemies than a board of lawn fanatics," he said. Marla smirked. "Oh, you sweet summer pilot. You have no idea." The following morning, Heroen attended the HOA's compliance consultation out of sheer curiosity. The meeting hall smelled of lavender disinfectant. Chairman Doskill presided at the head of the table, a man with a permanent politician's smile and eyes that never blinked. "Mr. Heroen," Doskill said smoothly, "welcome. It pains us to see you in such distress. Your lawn, your home, your lifestyle choices, they endanger the harmony we've built." "You stole from me," Heroen said flatly. Doskill's smile didn't falter. "We secured a dangerous artifact. Dangerous to you, dangerous to us. Surely, you wouldn't want to bring war relics into such a delicate community?" Heroen leaned forward. "Return it." The room went very quiet. Behind Doskill, a hologram of bylaws shimmered on the wall. Each clause lit up in sequence, like a judge slamming a gavel again and again. "You misunderstand," Doskill said softly. "The relic isn't yours. Nothing in this community truly is. It all belongs to harmony. Even you, Mr. Heroen." Something cold moved through Heroen's chest. For the first time in years, he felt the itch of battle. "Then consider me," he said, "non-compliant." The room rippled with murmurs. Doskill only smiled wider. "So be it. Harmony has ways of correcting stubborn weeds." By the time Heroen walked back out into the sunlit street, he knew two things. First, the HOA wasn't just an annoyance. It was a prison wrapped in pastel. Second, they'd chosen the wrong man to try and prune. And somewhere, pulsing in their vaults, the relic waited. Heroen didn't expect the retaliation to be so polite. The morning after his consultation, he opened his fridge to find every shelf filled with pastel blue pamphlets. Each one bore the smiling face of Chairman Doskill and the words, "Harmony begins in the home." His milk was gone. His eggs vanished. Even the jar of pickles he'd been saving was replaced by HOA literature. He held up one of the pamphlets, muttered, "Do they have a key to my soul too?" and tossed it in the sink. The faucet didn't turn on. Outside, sprinklers across the neighborhood hissed in perfect synchronization. His own lawn stayed dry and brown, the pariah patch of the block. By noon, a cheerful knock came at his door. Heroen opened it to find two community wellness officers, standing there in khaki shorts and white polos, clipboards tucked under their arms like sidearms. "Mr. Heroen," said the taller one, "we've noticed some distress indicators in your compliance metrics. We're here to help." Heroen leaned on the doorframe. "You're about 3 eggs short of helpful." The shorter officer gave a rehearsed chuckle. "That's the spirit. We'll just need to perform a brief harmony check. Standard procedure." They tried to step inside. Heroen didn't move. "Not today." The tall one tilted his head. "Non-cooperation increases your penalty tier." Heroen tilted his head back. "Cross this threshold and it'll increase your injury tier." For a moment, the two men wavered, their smiles twitching like badly programmed holograms. Then they pasted them back on, nodded, and retreated. A drone zipped by, scanning Heroen's doorway with a red beam. A holographic warning blinked across his porch. "Escalation pending." Heroen muttered, "Good, let it escalate." That evening, Marla appeared on his porch again, her satchel bulging with scavenged drone parts. "They cut your food supply?" she asked, already knowing the answer. Heroen gestured at the pile of pamphlets on his counter. "Breakfast of champions." She grinned, then pulled a piece of circuitry from her bag and set it down. It buzzed, projected a flickering map of the neighborhood. "I've been jamming their scanners. Not for long, though. They're upgrading." Heroen frowned at the map. Red zones pulsed around houses like a spreading infection. "They've got control over everything." "Everything's surface level," Marla said. She tapped a glowing point beneath the HOA's main hall. "What they don't want anyone to know is that there's a whole vault system under there. They keep the really illegal stuff locked away. The war relics, surveillance cores, maybe even that shiny ball they stole from you." Heroen's eyes hardened. "Then we break in." Marla gave a sharp laugh. "You make it sound like robbing a bakery." Daskill's got half the neighborhood wired to report anyone who sneezes too loudly. You try and get into that vault, and you'll vanish before you even find the stairs. Heroen sipped his coffee. Not if I make them come to me first. Marla leaned back in her chair. You've got guts. I'll give you that. But guts don't stop drones from torching your tomato patch. As if on cue, a distant whoosh sounded. Heroen turned his head to see a streak of fire rise from a hovering drone into his garden. A neat line of flame raced across the tomatoes, leaving black ash where fruit had grown. Marla whistled. Told you. The next morning, Heroen woke to find his face on every public display in the neighborhood. His image was paired with the words, non-compliant, community threat level 3. Children riding past on hoverboards pointed and whispered. Adults walked faster, clutching their grocery bags like shields. By afternoon, an emergency assembly was called in the neighborhood square. Heroen went partly out of defiance, partly out of curiosity. Chairman Daskill stood on a raised platform, the sun gleaming off his perfect teeth. Behind him floated a hologram of bylaws scrolling like scripture. Friends, Daskill said, his voice smooth as oil. Our community thrives on order, on peace, on compliance. Yet one man, one weed, seeks to undermine all we've built. Mr. Heroen believes himself above harmony. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Heroen crossed his arms and didn't flinch. Daskill raised his hand, and silence fell. We cannot allow defiance to take root. Today, we remind ourselves, harmony requires sacrifice. He snapped his fingers. A group of officers wheeled out a steel case the size of a coffin. The locks hissed, the lid creaked open, and inside lay Heroen's relic, the battered sphere, pulsing faintly like a captured heart. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Daskill smiled. This dangerous object was harbored illegally. It nearly cost us our community. But fear not, your board has secured it for study. And for safety. Heroen's blood ran hot. They'd paraded his past in front of the whole neighborhood like a trophy. Daskill's eyes flicked toward him, and the smile sharpened. And the one who hid it? He will be corrected. For the good of us all. The crowd turned. Every face, fearful and curious, landed on Heroen. Marla slid up beside him, whispering fast. Don't move. Not here. Too many eyes. Heroen didn't move. But inside, the itch of battle spread like wildfire. That night, Marla dragged him to the edge of the neighborhood, to a storm drain hidden behind perfectly trimmed hedges. You want your relic back? You'll need allies. And there's only one place to find them. Heroen ducked into the drain. The smell hit first, damp concrete, rust, and smoke. Then the sound, voices, dozens of them, echoing through the tunnels. They weren't HOA residents. They were the exiled, families with patched clothes, mechanics building weapons out of scrap, children with eyes too old for their faces. Welcome, Marla said grimly. To the non-compliant quarter. Heroen scanned the crowd. Each person bore the scars of resistance. Fines, beatings, broken homes. Yet when they looked at him, he saw something else. Expectation. A broad man with a limp stepped forward. You're the pilot, he said. The one who waved at the drone like you didn't care. Heroen nodded. The man's jaw tightened. Good. Then maybe you're the one who'll finally help us burn the board to the ground. The tunnels under the suburb felt like another planet. Pipes rattled overhead, dripping water into puddles that smelled faintly metallic. Fluorescent strips nailed into the walls flickered like nervous eyes, casting shadows over the faces of the exiled. Heroen followed Marla deeper into the quarter, his boots echoing on damp concrete. Dozens of people moved around them, fixing jury-rigged cooktops, patching clothes, soldering drone parts into weapons. Children darted between legs with the speed of street rats, slipping data slates into pockets and tugging them back out with grins that carried no innocence. Welcome to what's left of freedom, Marla said, trying to sound casual, but her voice carried an edge. You're seeing people who told the HOA no and paid for it. A man with a broad chest and a limp pushed forward. His face was hard, his beard patchy, and his eyes sharp. I'm Kellen, he said flatly. Used to be one of Daskill's compliance officers. Then I asked too many questions. He gestured at his leg, the limp made obvious. Questions get you reassigned. Heroen met his gaze. I'm not here to play revolutionary. I just want what's mine. That sphere. Kellen's lip curled. You think it's just yours? That thing has history. The board's terrified of it. Which means it belongs to all of us now. The tension between them sparked immediately. Heroen didn't flinch, but he felt the weight of the eyes around him. People who wanted him to lead, and people like Kellen who already resented the idea. Before the argument could ignite further, a small figure darted out of the crowd. A girl, maybe 12, with grease on her cheeks and mismatched goggles pushed onto her forehead. You're Heroen, right? She said breathlessly. I'm Tova. I got into their system. Look. She shoved a battered tablet into his hands. On the cracked screen flickered diagrams of the HOA's surveillance grid, drones, scanners, automated locks. Red icons pulsed like a heartbeat. Heroen's eyebrows rose. You hacked this. Tova puffed up proudly. Yeah, their passwords are dumb. Half of them are just Harmony 123. A ripple of laughter ran through the tunnel. Even Heroen chuckled. It was the first honest humor he'd heard in days. But the map's last layer stole the smile from his face. A glowing circle beneath the HOA headquarters. Marla pointed at it. That's the vault I told you about. Kellen stepped closer, his voice low and bitter. It's more than a vault. They're drafting a new charter. Full biometric enforcement. If it passes, the board won't need drones or fines. They'll have a permanent leash on every person in this neighborhood. The exiled murmured uneasily. Some clutched each other. Others looked at Heroen. Marla added, and they want your relic for it. Whatever that sphere is, it's the missing piece. Heroen felt the weight of their stares. He remembered the day he'd taken the relic. Amid the wreckage of a battlefield, brass shouting at him to walk away, his gut telling him it wasn't just debris. He hadn't known what it did, not exactly. Only that it pulsed with more than circuitry. Pulsed with intent. Then we stopped them, Heroen said simply. The crowd erupted, some in cheers, others in doubt. Kellen sneered. Easy to say when you're fresh to the fight. But people die when you poke the board. You willing to pay that cost, pilot? Heroen's eyes locked with his. I've paid before. I'll pay again. Tova broke the tension with a sudden squeal. Wait. Look. She jabbed at her tablet. New icons flickered to life. Patrol drones moving in formation. Marla's face drained. They found us. The tunnels exploded into motion. People grabbed weapons, shoved children behind barriers, yanked cables from walls to cut surveillance feeds. Heroen moved without thinking, snapping orders as though the war had never ended. Block the main corridor. Choke them in. Keep the families back. Marla gave him a look, half disbelief, half admiration, before darting to help. Kellen snarled but fell into line, directing fighters to cover flanks. A shriek of metal echoed as the first drone forced its way through a drain grate. Red light swept the tunnel. Someone screamed. Heroen ripped a pipe from the wall and swung it like a staff, smashing the drone into shards. Sparks rained over his shoulders. Non-compliance escalating. The machine voice droned before dying. More poured in. The underground quarter became chaos, smoke, fire, shouting. Heroen fought through it, pipe in hand, dragging people back, barking commands. Marla fried drones with hacked devices that spat blue arcs of electricity. Tova laughed wildly, punching override codes into her tablet and crashing drones into each other. At the height of it, Heroen saw something that chilled him. One drone wasn't attacking. It was projecting a live feed, broadcasting the raid to the HOA's headquarters. Daskil was watching. And worse, Daskil was smiling. The battle ended in wreckage. Drones littered the ground in burning heaps. People coughed through smoke, some wounded, a few dead. Heroen stood in the aftermath, chest heaving, pipe slick with oil. He looked at the broken drone projector. The last image burned in his mind. Daskil's calm, patient grin. They wanted us to fight back, Heroen said hoarsely. They wanted to see me lead. Marla wiped blood from her cheek, grimacing. Then what's the play? Heroen stared at the cracked ceiling of the tunnels, at the world above that thought itself peaceful and orderly. He clenched his fist. The play, he said, is we make them regret thinking I'm just another weed to pull. The exiled stared at him in silence. For the first time, Heroen realized they weren't just waiting for him to speak. They were waiting for him to lead. And in the depths of his mind, buried behind scars and silence, the relic pulsed in memory, like it knew its time was coming. Heroen had forgotten what it felt like to wake with adrenaline already pounding in his blood. In the tunnels, every morning began with the same choice. Wait for the HOA to tighten its chokehold, or strike first. He'd never been good at waiting. By the third day after the raid, the exiled were restless. Families patched holes in the walls with scavenged sheet metal. Fighters tested jury-rigged weapons built from plumbing and kitchen appliances. And everywhere Heroen went, eyes followed him. Not Kellen's eyes, though. Those burned with suspicion. A man unwilling to hand his authority to someone else. Small strikes, Heroen told the group gathered in the underground commons. Fast, loud, and embarrassing. Make the board bleed pride before it bleeds people. Marla grinned like a wolf. Mailbox sabotage? Heroen nodded. And more. Graffiti on lawns. Drone hijacks. Petty vandalism. Hit them where it stings, their perfect image. Not their teeth, not yet. Kellen scoffed. You think a few spray-painted fences and broken drones are gonna topple Daskill? He's got an army of smug neighbors ready to call him sir, for trimming their hedges straight. Not trying to topple him, Heroen said. Not yet. I'm trying to make him twitch. Force mistakes. Once he starts overreaching, people will see the board for what it is. The crowd murmured approval. Kellen folded his arms, glaring, but said nothing. The first strike happened that night. A dozen of them moved through the quiet streets, dressed in absurdly cheerful polo shirts and khaki shorts stolen from HOA officers. Heroen nearly laughed when he caught his reflection in a window. He looked like a parody of suburban bliss, clipboard and all. Tova hacked the drone patrol patterns from her tablet, sending two of them colliding in midair. The crash lit up the night sky, sparks raining onto manicured lawns. The rebels sprinted through cul-de-sacs, slapping magnetic paint sprayers against fences, covering them with bold words. Freedom doesn't need permission. Marla slipped into backyards and swapped out mailboxes, replacing them with mismatched, lopsided ones painted neon colors. One bright green mailbox had a crude caricature of Daskill's smile stretched so wide it looked like a scream. The next morning, the neighborhood woke to chaos. Perfect symmetry ruined. Drones scrambled to repaint and repair, but the damage was done. For the first time, laughter rippled through the streets. Not from rebels, but from residents. Did you see Daskill's face when he walked past that mailbox? Marla whispered later, barely containing her grin. He looked like someone had keyed his soul. Heroen allowed himself a small smile, but the HOA didn't laugh. Within days, new rules slammed into effect. Every resident was required to carry a compliance badge, scanned hourly by drones. Fines tripled overnight. Curfew was imposed, 10 p.m. sharp. And for the first time, neighbors began turning on neighbors openly. Whole families were fined because a child came home 10 minutes late. A woman wept as her car was seized for excessive driveway oil stains. Heroen saw it all and he felt the shift. Daskill wasn't just tightening his grip, he was strangling his own base. This is it, Heroen told Marla as they crouched in the shadows of a cul-de-sac, watching officers march door to door. We keep the pressure up, he'll implode. But Marla didn't smile this time. Careful, pilot. Pressure bursts pipes, but it also drowns the people standing nearest. The next raid wasn't funny. They targeted a drone hub hoping to steal parts. Tova jammed the signals, Heroen led the charge, and it all seemed clean, until the drones reactivated mid-theft, their systems patched by something new. Smarter code. Outside interference. Heroen's crew barely escaped. One of them didn't. A young fighter, caught by a taser net, dragged screaming into a van while the others fled. Back in the tunnels, Silence fell heavy. People avoided Heroen's eyes. Even Marla looked pale. Kellen seized the moment. This is what happens when we follow a soldier who doesn't know the war is already lost. Every raid puts us closer to a grave. Or exile. Heroen faced him calmly. And what's your plan? Hide until the bylaws choke us to death. Kellen slammed his fist on the table. My plan isn't to follow a man who brought this down on us because he couldn't mow his lawn. The crowd erupted. Some shouting in defense of Heroen. Others nodding grimly with Kellen. Before it could spiral further, Tova burst into the room, tablet clutched to her chest. Her eyes were wide. They've got me, she gasped. Everyone stared. What do you mean, got you? Marla demanded. Tova held up the tablet. On the screen was her own face, frozen mid-smirk from one of her hacks. Below it scrolled words in pastel blue. Captured infiltrator. To be corrected publicly. The rebels crowded around the screen, horrified. Tova whispered, I think they traced me. They're coming. Minutes later, the tunnels shook with the echo of distant explosions. The HOA wasn't sending drones this time. They were sending soldiers. Heroen grabbed his pipe-turned staff and turned to the crowd. No more jokes. No more graffiti. They've made this personal. We get her back. Or we end this trying. Marla's jaw set, her humor gone. Then it's war. Kellen muttered darkly, but even he didn't argue. Above them, the suburb slept under perfect lamplight, while beneath, the rebels prepared for open battle. And somewhere in the HOA headquarters, Tova sat in a cell, a child branded as a criminal, bait for the man Daskill wanted most. The Harmony Gala glittered like a jewel box. Rows of white tents, lanterns casting warm halos, and every resident dressed in identical pastel attire that made them look less like neighbors and more like mannequins. Heroen watched it all from the shadows across the street. The stolen HOA polo shirt stretched across his shoulders like an insult. This is it, Marla whispered, adjusting her own disguise. She looked almost respectable in pastel pink, though her grin betrayed her. The annual gala. Wine, cheese, and contracts written in blood. Behind them, a cluster of rebels shifted uncomfortably in their borrowed uniforms. They looked like bad caricatures of compliance, clipboards tucked under their arms, their smiles stiff. Heroen caught Tova's jittery excitement as she tugged at her oversized badge, eyes wide behind her goggles. You sure you're ready? He asked her quietly. She flashed a mischievous grin. They won't know what hit their systems. Besides, someone's gotta unlock the fun doors. Heroen's chest tightened. She was just a kid, and she'd been through more than most soldiers he'd served with. But there was no stopping her. Not now. Inside, the gala looked like a parody of utopia. Long tables draped in white, food arranged in perfect symmetry, music so bland it barely qualified as sound. Daskill stood at the center, smile wider than ever, shaking hands with residents while a group of corporate elites lingered nearby. Strangers in polished suits, eyes glittering with profit. That's them, Marla muttered, nodding at the suits. The council. They're here to sign off on the charter. Heroen felt the tension coil in his stomach. This was more than an HOA party. This was the birth of something much darker. An empire built on bylaws and surveillance, spreading beyond one neighborhood. The rebels slipped into position. Marla hacked a drone camera feed with a device hidden in her clutch. Tova crawled under a buffet table, tablet glowing faintly as she slid into the HOA's system. Heroen moved through the crowd with a tray of champagne flutes, playing the role of a silent server. Everything seemed smooth until the floor shifted. Not literally, but socially. Heroen felt it in the air, the sudden ripple of attention. Daskill's voice rang out, calm and amplified. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed council members, tonight we celebrate not only harmony, but the future of harmony. The final charter, biometric compliance for all. Polite applause, nervous laughter, and Daskill continued, his gaze sweeping across the crowd. We reveal the threat that would oppose such peace. 2 officers dragged someone onto the stage. Heroen's blood froze. It was Tova. Her goggles had been torn off, her face pale but defiant. She spat at the floor, earning a collective gasp. Marla swore under her breath. How? She was just. Heroen scanned the room, heart hammering. Tova was here, on display, but her tablet glowed faintly under the buffet table across the room. An image rippled across his mind. Two Tovas, one real, one projected. Daskil gestured to the girl on stage. This child infiltrated our sacred systems. Proof of the corruption among us. And proof that the so-called non-compliant are nothing more than weeds choking our paradise. The corporate council leaned in, clearly entertained. Daskil's smile widened. But even weeds have roots. And tonight we pull them. He snapped his fingers. The image of Heroen flashed on every display in the tent. His face marked with the bold words non-compliant leader. Gasps rippled. Residents looked around nervously. The council members whispered among themselves. Traitor! Kellen's voice hissed suddenly from behind Heroen. Heroen spun, and there he was. Kellen, in stolen uniform, standing too close, eyes burning with resentment. You lied to them, Kellen growled. You told them you were a hero. You didn't tell them about the massacre. The words struck like a blade. For a moment, the noise of the gala faded into static. Memories roared back. An order given in the war one Heroen had obeyed, one that had cost hundreds of civilians their lives. He had buried it deep, but not deep enough. You don't deserve their trust, Kellen spat. You're not a savior. You're just another butcher. The rebels who had followed Heroen faltered, confusion flickering in their eyes. Marla looked stricken, torn between disbelief and fear. Daskil's voice cut through the silence, smooth as glass. You see? Even among them, betrayal. Even their so-called leader is nothing but blood-stained ruin. The council chuckled. The residents shifted uncomfortably. Heroen stood frozen, rage and shame clawing at his chest. And then, faintly, a voice whispered from under the buffet table. Tova's voice, echoing through his earpiece. Don't listen. It's what they want. They need you off balance. But I found it, the sphere. It's in their vault. And it's wired to you, Heroen. They're terrified of you. The words cut through the fog. Heroen's spine straightened. His eyes locked on Daskil, who smiled knowingly, as if he already owned the ending. No, Heroen thought. Not this time. He raised his glass of champagne, smashed it against the floor, and stepped forward into the spotlight. If the board wanted a villain, he'd show them one. The gala descended into silence. Every resident's eyes locked on Heroen standing in the shards of glass he'd just shattered. For a moment, even the music stopped. Only Daskil smiled, sharp and confident, like a man who believed every piece was already his. Mr. Heroen, Daskil said smoothly, his voice carrying across the white tents. At last, the weed shows itself in the garden. Will you confess your crimes before your neighbors? Or must I remind them for you? Heroen stepped forward, past stunned residents and pale-faced rebels. His voice was low, steady. You've reminded them enough. Lawn heights, mailbox paint, the length of their shadows. You've got a crime for every breath they take. A ripple of nervous laughter stirred through the crowd, quickly stifled by drones humming overhead. Daskil's smile twitched. Marla's voice crackled in Heroen's earpiece. I'm in position. Tova's got the vault door open remotely. All you need to do is, well, not die before you get there. Heroen's eyes swept the gala. Too many guards, too many drones. Too many people who wanted to believe Daskil's lies because lies were easier than fear. But he wasn't here to win them with speeches. He was here to end this. Show them the truth, Heroen murmured, and smashed his stolen badge against the nearest drone. Sparks flew. The machine's camera blinked and suddenly the feeds flickered. Every holographic display lit up, not with bylaws, not with Daskil slogans, but with hidden files pouring out of the vault Tova had cracked. Images of families fined into poverty. Videos of residents dragged from their homes at night. Secret contracts with the corporate council, promising whole cities would be franchised into HOA colonies. Gasps rose like a tide. People turned to each other, fear giving way to outrage. Daskil's smile finally broke. "Cut the feeds," he roared. But Tova's voice chimed in Heroen's ear, gleeful. "Too late. It's everywhere. Even their lawn projectors are showing it." Sure enough, every perfect green yard outside the gala now glowed with words like, "Harmony is control," and "Your HOA sold you." The council members backed away from Daskil, muttering. Guards faltered. For the first time, the board's mask cracked. Daskil's eyes snapped back to Heroen. His voice dropped low, venomous. "You think this will save you? That relic doesn't just reveal. It obeys. You could have been a god with it. Instead, you'll die here." He pulled the sphere from a steel case at his side, its faint pulse bathing him in eerie light. For a heartbeat, Heroen felt it tug at his mind. Old memories, old orders, blood and fire pressing in. The implant in his skull answered, whispering that one thought, one command, could unleash devastation across the suburb. Marla shouted from somewhere in the chaos, "Don't let him use it!" Heroen stood at the center of a storm. Drones shrieking, guards shouting, residents surging. The relic calling to him like a heart he'd once owned. He could destroy everything, burn the HOA, the gala, maybe the whole city to ash. Or he could destroy the relic and bury its power forever. And then a third path opened. He reached for the sphere. Daskil lunged to stop him, but Heroen was faster. The moment his hands closed around it, the world went silent. He felt the relic's pulse sync with his own heartbeat. He didn't issue a command to destroy or enslave. He issued one word, spoken aloud and into the core of the implant itself. Broadcast. The sphere flared white. Every screen, every drone, every projector blazed with images of Daskil clutching contracts, laughing as families were fined, sneering at residents he called cattle. His voice echoed across every cul-de-sac. Nothing belongs to them, not even themselves. Neighbors who had watched in silence for years now saw the truth. Rage lit their faces. Someone shouted, "Enough!" Another tore off their compliance badge and threw it to the ground. The crowd surged, no longer afraid. The drones, bound to the relic's command, froze in place. Then, one by one, they powered down, their lights guttering out. Daskil stumbled back, pale and shaking. No, this wasn't the plan." Heroen stepped forward, sphere glowing in his hands. "Your plan was never harmony. It was control. And control just slipped through your fingers." Residents swarmed Daskil, not with violence, but with the unstoppable weight of rejection. His smile finally cracked, his voice drowned in the roar of a community reclaiming itself. By dawn, the HOA was finished. The council fled, the bylaws shredded and burned in piles across manicured lawns. Neighbors painted their fences wild colors, planted crooked gardens, and laughed like people remembering what freedom tasted like. Marla leaned against Heroen's porch, arms crossed, watching kids spray paint slogans where non-compliant holograms once glowed. "Congratulations! You're officially the first man in history to liberate a people with lawn care." Heroen chuckled, weary but alive. "Not how I thought the war would end." "Wars never end," she said softly. "They just change uniforms." Tova bounded up, goggles shining in the sunlight, tablet under her arm. "So what now? You gonna be the new chairman?" Heroen shook his head. "No chairman, no boards, no harmony that comes with a price tag. What comes next?" He looked out at the neighbors tearing down surveillance posts with their bare hands. "Belongs to them." He set the relic down on the porch railing. Its glow faded at last, like a heart finally allowed to rest. And for the first time in years, Heroen felt something close to peace.